the October special session, Enhancing Announcements. I am Angie Atwell. I'm one of the Associate Directors for the Rothwell Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence with the Worldwide Campus. And again, thank you for choosing to spend a couple minutes here with us. It is my pleasure to welcome you and introduce our speaker today. But before that, I just have a couple of housekeeping reminders or announcements. The first is this session will be recorded, so please just keep that in mind. And also, we are asking that you mute your microphones. You are welcome to keep your camera up if you feel comfortable, but please be sure that you're muting your microphone just so there's no background noise happening. And we do ask that you keep any questions that you have to the end. If you are like me and if you don't write it down, you forget it, please feel free to utilize the chat box. We will be monitoring that, so we'll be sure if you have any questions that we will address them by the end of the session. Please also feel free to engage in the chat box, talk about the things that you have done or best practices that you have, and we'll be sharing some resources in there as well. So without further ado, I will welcome Dr. Danielle Aming. She's a faculty developer here with us, and she's specifically responsible for the College of Aeronautics, but today she's going to be talking about enhancing announcements. So take it away, Danielle.
Thank you, Angie, for the warm introduction, and thank you all for joining me today, this afternoon or morning or whatever time it is where you are. Today I'll be presenting, my special session will be on enhancing announcements. So before we get started, I do have a quick poll that I'd like you all to engage in if you can. So there are 2 questions on the poll that you should be able to see. The first one is, how many additional announcements have you created after your welcome announcements? So for those of you who may not know, with Worldwide, you are required to make 1 welcome announcement, but after that, anything is additional. So just kind of seeing where everyone is in the room regarding announcements, how many have they made regarding usage? And then the second one is, which of these features have you used for any of your announcements, if you have utilized any of them? So I'll give everyone some time to choose the appropriate answer.
In what time period? Is this per course since I started working for Embry-Riddle?
So this would be per course regarding how many welcome or how many announcements you have. So per course, how many announcements do you on average have? I'll give everyone a couple more seconds to answer. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. And this time I will share the results. Can we all see the results this time? If anyone is able to give me a check mark, a question, indicator that you all can see the results, that would be great. It says I can. If not, I can say what they are. Yeah, okay, cool, you can see them. So pretty much, as you see, there's a wide variety of individuals depending on how many announcements they have used. And then also everyone seems to have utilized some of the features, few more than others. So this is great. So I will stop sharing the poll at this point in time. All right, so today's agenda for our presentation, we're going to discuss what announcements are. I'm sure based off of our poll, everyone has an idea of what announcements, at least a welcome announcement, but utilizing multiple announcements, but just so that we can have just a general definition that we can all work with on the same page for this presentation. I'm just going to go over what announcements are. Looking at the community of inquiry framework, I like to, when I'm utilizing a best practice, if there's some type of framework or theoretical orientation I can ground myself in, I like to kind of pair the two together. So for this one, I'll be talking about community of inquiry. I'll be discussing some of the best practices that go along with enhancing announcements and announcements usage in general. And then we'll walk through some different features in Canvas regarding announcements. So pretty much with announcements, again, going back to our poll, it seems like everyone has used announcements in some form or fashion. So whether you maybe have a face-to-face course and you have a Canvas as a component and you post an announcement saying class is canceled. If you're worldwide, you may make an announcement about grades being delayed or late a little bit. You may post an announcement about additional content for a course or some of the material, and it might not be able to post that content anywhere else regarding discussions or in feedback. So you make an announcement about some content. So in general, you may have used announcements for several of these different options, but really what announcements are, they are a tool in Canvas that you can use to broadcast information to your students. So again, whether that's just in time information, you can also use this to kind of develop your instructor presence. So we have discussions and we have feedback, but announcements can also be used to kind of put more of your presence, put more of your personality in your course. And again, as we talked about, adding additional content and more knowledge for our students. So as I mentioned, I'm someone who likes to kind of pair any type of best practice or anything I'm doing with a theoretical framework if I find one that's applicable. So for me, community of inquiry is actually a really great one for kind of talking about enhancing our announcements and infusing instructor presence specifically. So with the community of inquiry framework, it's pretty much a theory where you're looking at how do you create more deep and meaningful learning experiences, and you'll do this through building a community in your classroom. This framework does touch more on the online, but these elements are still very specific that you could use in a face-to-face classroom. And the three elements are your social presence, your cognitive presence, and your teaching presence. So pretty much with this framework, it was actually introduced by C.S. Pierce and John Dewey, and they took it from a scientific perspective, and they, based off of their experimentation and their research, looked at you can gain more knowledge by embedding it in a social context. So whether that's in a community of having some type of social context, you can develop knowledge even further with the individuals who are involved. And that was taken by Randy Garrison, Terry Anderson, and Walt Archer, and they kind of applied it specifically to online learning because there was a lot of discussion on how are you able to make a community in the online environment? What does that look like? And once it was discovered that you can, how do you implement these elements to kind of create that more of a collaborative experience in an online environment? But as I mentioned, you can still apply all these practices and ideas into a face-to-face classroom as well. And the whole idea is to basically develop a sense of community and collaboration that you need in order to kind of elevate the educational transaction between each of the students. As I mentioned, there's three different elements. It's the social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence. So with social presence, that kind of focuses on the environment and the students, and is an environment being created where students can collaborate, where they can be themselves, where they can engage and build connections with one another. The cognitive presence is actually the content and knowledge being exchanged between the individuals who are in this community or classroom. And then the teaching presence is the instructor and the instructor's ability to engage the students, convey knowledge, manage the course, do all those things in a way where everyone who's in the classroom can develop and create a community, and once again, kind of build the knowledge off of each other. So as I mentioned, with enhancing announcements, this one really focuses on the instructor presence, more that teaching presence, because announcements are a tool that only instructors have access to, but they are able to utilize this to kind of infuse more content, more knowledge, and kind of create an environment to kind of open up the social and the cognitive a little bit more. So as I mentioned, it's something in online, but you can use this if you are someone who teaches in a face-to-face classroom. I did find some articles connecting the social presence to the community of inquiry framework, and specifically instructor presence. So what I did here was create a little Padlet. And as you can see, I have 4 articles here. So this was another way that I decided to take some articles that I may normally have linked in either an announcement format and created this Padlet so I can link the articles here. So what I did was create a little blurb about each of the articles I have or videos. And then the Padlet gives you the option to have them click directly to the article themselves. So this is kind of a different platform ways to kind of introduce information, a little bit more interactive to have your students engaging with this type of content. The first article is specifically on how to avoid the trap of info dumping. So sometimes you may have an idea or you may have missed the point or you're not sure if your students may understand some of the content. So you kind of just jot something down really quickly and then send it out as an announcement. And this article touches on how you might be, students may be having information overload and they might not be able to really process the information you want them to. So even though you think they're processing the information, if it's too much information, they might not be able to. So this article focuses on how do you bring that down and make it more in smaller bites for students to understand with your announcements. The next one, how to give narrative shape to your online course. So again, this focuses on your creating a timeline and building a roadmap and how you can utilize this to kind of build your narrative presence throughout the whole course. So there is a lot of prep with this specific type of, if you choose to do this, but it kind of helps build the shape of your course and connects it with all the material throughout. The next one's a video on how to infuse your instructor presence through announcements. So kind of, again, utilizing the announcements a little bit more. And then the last one are 4 engagement tools that increase e-learning, specifically looking at the community of inquiry framework and how to build upon that. So as I mentioned, we'll discuss some best practices when it comes to enhancing your announcements. So again, we talk about the welcome announcement. That's your first impression with your students. So you want to make sure you introduce who you are, some of the content that's going to go into the course itself, kind of classroom etiquette, those pieces there. The next part is preparation. So this is something that requires you to happen before your term starts, before your course starts. You want to create a plan. This is a little bit more, requires you to kind of build up a little bit more before your course starts, but it definitely can help regarding how the course goes throughout the semester. We'll talk about some of the features, but one of them is specifically delay posting. So what you can do is build your content and delay your posting so that you don't have to go in every week, but you can just kind of have everything kind of go out when you need it to go out to match the flow of your course. The next one is reusability. If you're somebody who is teaching the same course over and over, you can kind of create your announcements to match similar content. So even though the dates might be in different terms, you can still use, the content will be the same. So you can kind of set that up and that happen. You can build all of that information and keep that information and use in different courses. The next best practice is the amount per week. So you want to be careful with how many announcements that you send out, depending on, and we'll talk about some things to know, but depending on how many announcements you receive, you might be sending out a lot of notifications to your students to the point where they might not be coming back and reading your announcements anymore. So you just kind of want to gauge how many announcements you're using per week. I personally kind of don't do more than 3 announcements per week. I kind of do a summary of the previous week and a kind of what's happening this week, one specifically for content, and then I kind of save one in my back pocket in case something comes up and I have to tell them, hey, grades are going to be delayed, this happened, anything that they need to know in that way. So that's kind of the one that I kind of prescribe to. But again, you just kind of want to be aware of how many announcements you're making per week. And then again, linking your announcements, you can utilize this for content related real world examples. Sometimes you have some great experience and it still applies to your course, but there might not be a good place to put it regarding discussions or feedback. So you can really use the announcement option to kind of give more life to your course and your course a little bit more of a narrative. So as I mentioned, there are a few things to know when it comes to enhancing your announcements. With notifications, your students have to turn on their notifications themselves in order to get your announcement notifications. So this might be something you actually want to include in your welcome announcement, saying, just so you all know, as a class, I'm going to be utilizing the announcement feature. So you may want to turn on this notification so that you get all of my announcements. So that way the students know, hey, I might miss some pertinent information if I don't have this notification turned on. So I should go on and turn that on for the students. Again, the notifications come as emails to the students. So just, again, being aware with how many per week. We know the students get emails from a lot of different entities, a lot of different departments. So we don't want our notifications to get lost in their email. So being aware of how many announcements you have per week is definitely something to just kind of keep in your back of your mind, because they do come in as emails for your students. And then one other thing, when it comes to images, the students actually will not get the image in the email. So when you're placing an announcement in your course, you may want to add some text to describe kind of what's happening in the announcement. So you may want to make a note, hey, this image, hey, this document, in case things don't kind of flow over into the email, so that the student knows there's something more that they should be looking at. And then they can go ahead and kind of log into Canvas and see that image, the video, whatever it is in that specific way. So these are just some things for you to know to kind of help you when you're building or utilizing the announcement features. When it comes to the features, here I took some screenshots so we can actually see kind of what you're looking at with Canvas. But pretty much everyone's creating an announcement, but we'll kind of walk through a few of them a little bit more in depthly. So we have the links, we have the image option, media, documents, and then recently there was actually a Canvas update. So if you haven't been in Canvas recently, there's the embed option. So now it's separate from looking where before it was embedded either in media or somewhere else. Now it's actually outside itself. So this is a new update that Canvas went through, I believe, this past weekend. At the very bottom, before you save your announcement and it posts out, there are additional features. So you have the attachment. As I mentioned, there's delay posting, and then there's allow liking. With the delay posting, this allows you to kind of create all your announcements and then put them off later on in the semester, so you can kind of choose when they want to come out. The allow liking, you do have this option, and then there are a few other options under allow liking. Just be aware if you click some of them, that shows you want to have the students keep liking them. If the more likes an announcement gets, it will actually move up to the top. So that's going to throw off if the most recent announcement will not be there any longer, if there's an announcement that everyone has liked a lot. So just something to be aware of with the whole allow liking feature. I want to touch on delay posting because there were some things I mentioned before about preparation. And if you want to use some of the platform features I use, such as Padlet, you do have to build all of that before your term starts, but it is well worth it. It helps from a time management standpoint. You also can delay all these to later. So as I mentioned, you would just go to delay posting, and then you would choose whatever date and time that you would want the announcement to become active. Just a little reminder that if you are delaying your announcements later, this does not mean you're actually being active in your course. You still have to do all those great, wonderful things of providing feedback, engaging in discussions, utilizing the gradebook features. So you still want to make sure that you're interacting with your students. The time, the delay posting is just one additional feature for you from a time management perspective. So just kind of want to put those few things out there regarding delay posting. When it comes to, there's one other kind of little secretive, it's not really secret, but there's a little bit, another feature. You can actually pin announcements to your home page. So once you decide to activate this feature, when you log into your home page or when your students log in, the most recent announcements will be at the very top. I will say this does require you to go into the settings option and add something additional. So be very careful to not change anything else in your course, because you don't want to mess up some of the other features that are already happening. So if you would like to do this, you would just go down to the bottom where it says settings. You actually have to go all the way to the bottom where it says more options and click on that. And then actually, as you see right here at the very end, it says show recent announcements on course homepage. It automatically defaults to 3. So again, looking at it from a best practice perspective, you may not want to do more than 3, because again, if you have 20 announcements, it's going to really clutter up your homepage and move all the information down a little bit. So again, looking from a best practice perspective, you can choose how many you want to have, but 3 is kind of, it defaults to 3. You can even just choose 1 if you would like. It's really up to you. All right, so let's take a look at Canvas. So as I mentioned, I kind of logged into and created a little sandbox for this presentation. So what's happening here is you can see this is my homepage, and even though there's nothing here, because it is a sandbox, it's empty. But as you see, I made an announcement and I did activate the pinning feature. So you can see that this was the most recent announcement I made. And then if I click on it here, you can see the text that I put, and I did put an image. So I did make sure to include in my text that there is an image in here and kind of what this image specifically talks about. So if a student gets this email, or if you were to get this email, you would know, okay, there's an image here. This is some of the information, but let me go into Canvas and I kind of know what I'm kind of can look out for what I'm going to see. So that's one of the options here when it comes to if you have an image and what it would look like. And then just a really quick review here of kind of some of the things that we talked about here again. Broadcasting information, that's pretty much what announcements are, and some of these other features we talked about here. So if I actually wanted to create an announcement, I'd go right up here to this announcement option, click on announcement. And then if I actually wanted to add the Padlet that I showed you all before, as you can see, I did lots of test runs with this, so I was ready for all of you. So I would put Padlet there, I'd give it a title. I would make sure I would want to include some text so that, again, if it comes up as a notification or an email, my students would know what I'm talking about. I would go to the Padlet itself and then go to the share option up here. And then you want to go down and look for this embed in your blog or your website. So you're going to grab this embed code. You're going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my announcement. Remember, I'm going to go here to either the insert or the bar. I prefer the insert option. That's just me. And you're going to find embed. You're going to place the code in here, the whole code. You're going to submit, and there you go. If I go down, I can delay it for when it wants to come out later. I can also allow liking, and then remember, as I mentioned, sort by likes. I'm not going to do any of those things today, though. And I can save it. So this way, it's still the same Padlet that I had before, but now it's embedded into the announcement. It gives me the same options. Students can still click on each article. And this is just a different way to present the information to your students, however you would like. The students have the option to kind of like whichever one they would like to hear as well on the Padlet. And then if I were to go back to the home page, you can see now, because I set my pinning for announcement feature, I have 2 announcements. So when they log in, they would get to see both announcements here. If we wanted to add another announcement, we would do the same thing, start an announcement, make sure you have the topic. This time I'll try a video. And because I recorded my videos in Studio, I actually have to find this little studio icon here. Unfortunately, it's not in the insert option, so I do have to use the bar for the studio if I record my videos in Studio. And then as you see here, this is my little library. I'm going to choose the video that I will post for as my welcome introduction. With Studio, if you post a video, you can allow comments, but here is a little tip. You will not get an email that any of the comments are there. You actually have to go back to the video where you posted it and see the comments. So if you want to utilize a feature there, you can, but you're not going to get any type of notification about that. So I just turned them off, and I will embed my video here. I did forget to do a step though. I forgot. Oh no. Do I have to remove it? So I did forget to put my text there. See? Now I'm going to embed my video. have the text so that everyone knows what is contained in this announcement. We have the same options below, and then we'll want to save the video. And then if we were to go back to the home page, now we have 3. So I set my pinning to 3. So if I were to add one more announcement, I would like to add an image. So this time I will make sure to put the text. And then I keep my images on my desktop. So I'm going to actually go find my image. When I hit insert and then image and then upload an image, I will just drag it from my desktop there. When it comes to the alt text, you want to make sure to include all the main pieces that you have on there. You want to hit submit. And there you go. And then save. So I have, again, this image is there so they know what's contained in the announcement. We have some best practices. If I were to go back to the home page, because I set my pinning to 3, now the original one is gone and then the top 3 are there. So these are the 3 most recent announcements I made. So this is kind of some features to play around with. And then this is what it looks like when you pin the announcements and moving them around based off of the most recent order. So now if we go back to our presentation, just a quick review of everything that we talked about. So again, with announcements, it's just a way for you to broadcast information to your students, any type of information you would like to kind of use to enhance the course. This is just one way to engage your students. As I mentioned, we're still providing feedback and discussions. We're still providing feedback for assignments. This is just one more tool you can use to give additional content, to give your teaching presence, to kind of build that community classroom. But you still have all those other tools that you currently utilize right now. Some of the features I talked about, they are ERAU specific, meaning they are Embry-Riddle specific. So if you were to teach potentially at another institution that has Canvas, you may have some of these features, you may have more features, you may lose some of these features. So just so you know, the features in Canvas currently are specific to Embry-Riddle. So something to be aware of for those of us who may be teaching at other institutions and have access to Canvas. Again, you want to include the content, like I said, if you're making an announcement in that area, because with the notifications and the emails, if it's just an image, if it's just a video, the students may not know what information is contained there. So you always want to include some type of summary to kind of convey what is happening in the announcement. And with pinning announcements, just be careful of how many you pin there, because if you pin too many, it'll start pushing down the information on the homepage. So that's all the content I have for all of you. I see the chat is kind of like, there's lots going on in the chat. I'm sorry I cannot pay attention, but does anyone have any questions for me about this presentation, some of the features I talked about?
Danielle, thanks so much for putting this together. Very informative. I just missed the part where you showed how to get the code from Padlet. I saw you paste it, but I just wasn't sure how to actually export it. Would you mind showing that again if it's not too much?
Sure.
Same.
So can you actually see back where it should say my sandbox? Are you able to see that right now?
I see your announcements page.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
me too.
So I moved, do you see the Padlet now?
I do. Okay, so it's just on the side in Padlet.
So
okay.
it's actually, if you go all the way over to the side where it says share.
Okay.
So you have a few different options to share. You can link it. There's a QR code, but you want to use the embed in your blog or your website.
Awesome.
And then
Okay.
what you do here, I would just click copy because there's a lot of text going on and I wouldn't want to miss any of it. So if you hit copy, it copies everything to your clipboard. And then when you go back, you would just right click and then put paste and it would come up that way. when
Okay.
you're trying to embed the information.
Is that a free account with Padlet?
Yeah, Padlet is free. So anyone, you don't have to be connected to the institution to use it. And you'd be able to utilize all, like I said, I just made a Padlet and connected all of my articles on there myself. So, but yeah, it's a free tool to use.
Thanks, Danielle.
You're welcome. Other questions?
I was just going to add to the Padlet, I think that you're limited to making 10 in the free account, but you can just delete old ones, if you need to. So I think I've used my free account forever because I just keep deleting old ones. So just an important note there. I have a couple of questions from the chat, but again, if you have questions, feel free to chime in. Valerie wanted to talk a little bit more about best practice for using announcements versus the instructor discussion forum. So she says, when I place things in discussion, hardly anyone responds. I'm not even sure that they're reading the discussion. I know they read the announcements because I get emails asking questions. So can we talk a little bit more about announcements versus the discussion kind of feature?
Sure. So the thing, and I will note that with, if you use announcements at Embry-Riddle, we don't have the feature to turn comments on. So some other institutions may have it where if you post an announcement, you can actually have people comment on your announcement. We don't have that feature available. So pretty much the difference I would say is with the announcements, you're kind of hoping that they read the information. It's not necessarily, you wouldn't know because there's no engagement that they can give you back except for the whole liking of the post. With the discussions, you can actually see if they respond or if you're asking them to respond back, you're able to see that thread if they do so. So I would say those are probably the two biggest. But as I mentioned, sometimes you have some really great content that still applies to your class, but maybe where you are in the term, maybe where you are in the textbook, it doesn't really quite fit. The announcements are a great place to post that additional content that you may want your students to have. And I always get the question from students, is this going to be on the test? No, it's not going to be on the test. This is just more real world examples. These are just more things that you should use for your students, just to kind of give them a more of a well-rounded example of where this content can apply when they go out into the real world. So that's kind of what I would say would be the difference between the two. I hope I answered your question.
We also had another question from Valerie. I think that she was just wondering, she saw the enable podcast feature.
Yes.
And so Misha was kind of looking quickly at the Canvas guides. And so I do have a couple of resources for that. I don't know if anyone on this call has ever utilized that feature, but it sounds like if you have a podcast, you can kind of enable it there.
Yes, you can enable the podcast. I believe you can actually also connect it to other individual podcasts. So it's not just your own podcast, but other individuals, if you think they are applicable, you can connect them. And I believe they can kind of they will give this option for the students to go to the podcast to view. I believe that's how that feature works. There's Canvas Guide.
And then there also seemed to be a lot of interest in what Cheryl's doing in her class. She's using Planner and providing some guidance for students for the entire course using an announcement. So she did share previously in the chat, she shared the document that she's using. So that's available for everyone. I don't know, Cheryl, if there's anything additional you wanted to kind of add to that conversation?
Oh, hi, Angie. Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. The planner, it was sort of a thing in my head I created because students have so many deliverables in the course, and it's strategically planned by them. So I thought, what better way to have them have a planner where everything's on one sheet and they can just follow that along throughout the course. And then I thought, well, what even better than all this stuff I'm putting in announcements, put it in a packet. And they have it the first week at one time, and they don't have to worry about it. So it's a work in progress, but feel free. Anybody want the planner, you can add to it and modify it according to your course. And the packet, give it a try. Students, I've gotten really good feedback so far. So.
And that's a great tool, similar to like how Padlet is an additional tool. You're still using the announcements, but kind of giving the information in a different way. It's just a great way to kind of engage the students a little bit differently. Maybe look out for the students who may learn a little bit differently. So I saw in the chat, someone mentioned great for visual learners. So same thing, it sounds like with the planner, it's just another tool to help students, be successful in these courses. So thank you for sharing.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl. I think that's a great idea. And like Danielle was saying, some people, they're always looking at the announcements and some don't look at the announcements at all. So like kind of having it at the beginning going, hey, this is what's going to be discussed throughout the term as far as like what's coming up. Like I teach Management 371. So these are the weeks that you have presentations due. These are the weeks you have self-assessments due, kind of thing. So it's one of those things where they're getting a visual of what's coming in the upcoming weeks, as well as getting in the announcements each week as well.
Awesome. Thank you all for your questions, for your insights. This is something that I have just started utilizing. Like I said, I'm very proud of myself for using the Padlet. I learned specifically how to navigate the Padlet just for this presentation. So trust me, this is something that once you get familiar with it, it's definitely a really neat tool to just kind of, again, enhance your class. Not take away from, just one more enhancement. So to continue going on, just a little bit more information about our office. So as Angie mentioned earlier, I am a faculty developer specifically connected to the College of Aeronautics worldwide. So here's just some of our information, our website, our email, the faculty resource site, our e-union, and I did create an infographic, which will be available on the website for you all kind of looking at some of the information I talked about. So all that stuff is there on our website, as well as some other great resources. So all that is there if you all want to take a look. And that is all I have for all of you today. So again, thank you all for joining me and taking the time out to kind of learn about a feature that's always been there, but maybe just how to utilize it a little bit differently in your courses. Hi, everyone.
Great job.
Thank
Wonderful.
you. Thank you.
It was awesome, Danielle.
Thank you.
I love the Padlet.
I know. I'm going to use it all the time. It's so fun.
It is.
Padlets are so fun.
It makes it a lot more interactive too, which is awesome.
I think Cheryl's right. I think we should look at putting something together, a nice little, even if it's not live, maybe a nice video of, how important using a Padlet can be, and maybe in different places besides announcements, discussions, and other things. Assignments, or we used it as assignments in Oklahoma, which was kind of fun. So yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
I did it.
Awesome.
Did you stop the recording?
Probably not.